You've been taught your entire life to win, to push harder, to try more, to outrun, outshine, outperform. But here is the paradox you were never warned about. You lose yourself every time you try to win. Not because winning is wrong, not because ambition is evil, not because success is unworthy. You lose yourself because in the pursuit of victory, you begin to trade away the very thing you hoped winning would give you. Peace, worth, freedom, belonging, meaning, self-respect. You try to win love and lose the ability to be honest. You try to win approval and lose the courage to be real. You try to win status and lose the joy of simplicity. You try to win arguments and lose the relationship. You try to win the future and lose the present moment. The world tells you winning is everything. But life whispers that winning is nothing if you lose yourself along the way. And most people never notice this quiet internal collapse. Because the applause on the outside drowns out the emptiness within, the game you don't realize you're playing. Most of your life, you've been playing a game you never consciously agreed to play. The rules were taught early. Be impressive. Be exceptional. Be strong. Be admired. Be right. Be successful. Be better. And the moment you accepted these rules, you unknowingly accepted the identity of a competitor. Even in moments of rest, your mind keeps score. Am I ahead or behind? Who's doing better than me? Am I enough yet? Am I winning? But tell me, what exactly are you trying to win? A life that constantly compares is a life that never arrives. Because comparison is a treadmill. The scenery changes, but you never truly move. This is the tragedy of the game. When you try to win at life, you stop living it. You become a strategist instead of a participant, a performer instead of a presence, a competitor instead of a human being. The game steals everything real and replaces it with everything exhausting. The ego's obsession with being somebody. Trying to win is the ego's attempt to protect itself. The ego is terrified of being ordinary, terrified of being unseen, terrified of being unimportant. So it whispers, you must win at something. You must be better. You must be admired. You must stand out. You must prove your worth. And you chase these demands as if your life depends on them. But the ego never stops raising the bar. You become what you thought you wanted. And immediately, it tells you it isn't enough. You get the job, and the ego says, aim higher. You gain success, and the ego says, it won't last. You win the argument, and the ego says, win the next one. You achieve the goal, and the ego says, set a bigger one. The ego feeds on dissatisfaction, and your victories only make it hungrier. Trying to win is trying to satisfy something that cannot be satisfied. You lose yourself because the ego demands that you abandon your humanity in exchange for its approval. And that is a trade you must stop making. Winning requires a mask. Living requires a face. Trying to win forces you to become something strategic, a version of yourself optimized for advantage. You shift your voice to sound smarter. You filter your emotions to appear stronger. You change your opinions to fit in better. You sharpen your attitude to seem more confident. You shape your personality to attract approval. But every adjustment pulls you further away from who you really are. Winning demands a mask. Living demands a face. And the longer you wear a mask, the heavier it becomes. You forget what your real voice sounds like. You forget what you actually enjoy. You forget what you truly want. You forget how to be authentic. You begin to lose the very self you are trying to make valuable. You become an expert in becoming someone, and a stranger to being anyone. The stress of constantly trying. There is a particular kind of stress that people mistake for strength. It's the stress of maintaining the image of someone who is winning. Trying to win creates a chronic inner tension. You must always be alert. You must always perform. You must always bring your best. You must never show weakness. You must never slow down. You must never allow yourself to be fully human. Your nervous system becomes conditioned to constant vigilance. Even your moments of rest are filled with pressure. I should be doing more. I should be getting ahead. I'm wasting time. Someone else is moving faster. I can't fall behind. You are not living. You are maintaining. You are not breathing. You are bracing. You are not growing. You are grinding. Trying to win turns every day into a battlefield, not against the world, but against yourself. And the deeper cost, the quieter parts of life fade into the background. Laughter, stillness, connection, joy, curiosity, presence, spontaneity, peace. You can win 1,000 races and still miss the miracle of simply being alive. Winning is about the future. Living is about now. Trying to win pulls you out of the present moment and drags you into the future. Everything you do becomes a transaction. I'll do this now, so I can be happy later. But later never arrives, because the future cannot give you what the present refuses to receive. Trying to win is always about the next step, the next achievement, the next milestone, the next validation. Living is always about this step, the breath you're taking, the moment unfolding, the experience happening now. When you try to win, you postpone your life until further notice. When you stop trying to win, you begin living in the only place life ever happens. Here, now, this moment, not the next one. The fear hidden beneath every victory. Trying to win is rarely about winning. It's about avoiding something, avoiding insignificance, avoiding being overlooked, avoiding being ordinary, avoiding being forgotten, avoiding facing yourself. Because if you stop chasing victory, you're left alone with the quiet truth you've been running from. You don't feel like enough unless you're winning. You've been conditioned to believe that worthiness is earned instead of inherent, that love must be won instead of received, that respect must be fought for instead of lived into, that identity must be built instead of uncovered. Your fear is not of losing the race. Your fear is of losing the identity that depends on the race. Winning becomes survival. Losing becomes annihilation. And in a world where your existence feels conditional, you run endlessly because stopping feels dangerous. But the truth is simpler and much softer than that. You are not afraid of losing. You are afraid of being seen without your victories. You fear that without achievement there is nothing left. But there is. There is you, the real you, the one you abandoned to chase someone else's applause. Every victory creates another prison. Victory promises freedom. But watch what happens after you win. You win once, and now you must win again. You achieve the goal, and now you must set a bigger one. You impress others, and now you must maintain the image. You outperform someone, and now you must protect your position. Instead of releasing you, victory traps you in a cycle of maintenance and fear. You fear losing what you've gained. You fear others catching up. You fear expectations rising. You fear your identity crumbling. You become a prisoner inside the very success you thought would liberate you. The ego celebrates the win, but immediately begins calculating how to avoid losing next time. So you keep performing. You keep pretending. You keep pushing. And slowly, quietly, you lose the joy that sparked the journey in the first place. Every victory births a new insecurity when the ego is the one keeping score. You thought you were building a throne, but you were building a cage, when winning costs your humanity. Trying to win demands that you sacrifice parts of yourself. To win the debate, you sacrifice compassion. To win approval, you sacrifice authenticity. To win status, you sacrifice simplicity. To win the future, you sacrifice the present. To win control, you sacrifice peace. To win admiration, you sacrifice truth. What kind of victory requires the death of who you really are? What do you gain if you lose the ability to breathe freely in your own skin? Winning can inflate your image, but only presence nourishes your soul, and the soul starves in a life built on performance. The greatest cost of trying to win is the gradual erosion of your humanity. You become efficient but not alive, successful but not whole, admired but not known, victorious but not free. The endless race. You were never born to run. Do you ever feel tired even when nothing is physically exhausting you? That is the fatigue of the invisible race, the race of comparison, the race of expectations, the race of perfection, the race of getting ahead, the race of proving your worth. You wake up running. You fall asleep running. You dream of running. You've never questioned the race itself, only how to run faster. But here is the truth. The race is not real. Only the running is. There is no finish line, no final victory, no moment where the ego says, "You are enough now," because the ego has no interest in declaring the race over. It thrives on movement. It survives on lack. It feeds on restlessness. You cannot win a race that was designed to never end. The only victory is stepping out of it entirely. Trying to win makes you smaller, not bigger. We imagine victory expands us, but in reality, the chase for victory shrinks us. It narrows our awareness. It tightens our chest. It limits our choices. It shrinks our imagination. It restricts our joy. It hardens our heart. It contracts our presence. It weakens our spirit. Why? Because trying to win requires you to move from fear, not freedom. Fear collapses you inward. Fear makes you protective. Fear makes you suspicious. Fear makes you rigid. Fear makes you reactive. But when you stop trying to win, your inner world expands. You breathe deeper. You listen more. You loosen up. You soften. You open. You feel. You live. Winning hardens you. Living opens you. And you were built to open. The power of losing intentionally. There is a kind of loss that is not failure but liberation. The loss of the argument to save the relationship. The loss of the performance to regain authenticity. The loss of the mask to regain your face. The loss of control to regain peace. The loss of perfection to regain humanity. The loss of speed to regain presence. Sometimes you must lose in order to return to yourself. Not losing out of weakness, but losing out of wisdom. Because the truth is, you cannot win at a game that requires you to abandon yourself. Losing becomes freedom when what you lose is the illusion that you had to win, when the need to win finally breaks open. There is a moment in every life when the exhaustion becomes louder than the ambition. A moment when the pressure to win cracks open something softer inside you. It happens quietly, often after a failure, a heartbreak, a disappointment, a moment when the world stops applauding long enough for you to hear your own breath. And in that breath, a truth rises. I can't live like this anymore. Not because you're weak, not because you're incapable, but because the version of you that was trying so hard to win was never meant to carry so much weight. You begin to feel the heaviness of every mask you wore, the emptiness of every forced victory, the loneliness of every performance, the dryness of every moment you couldn't breathe. You see clearly that you weren't living. You were negotiating constantly with the fear of not being enough. And for the first time, you become willing to ask, what if winning was never the point? What if being was enough? What remains when you stop trying to win? The moment you stop trying to win is not the moment you fall apart. It is the moment you fall inward. into softness, into presence, into breath, into truth. You begin to feel yourself again, not the polished version, not the strategic version, not the admired version, but the real one. The one who laughs without worrying how it looks, speaks without rehearsing, feels without apologizing, loves without calculating, lives without competing. You realize that everything you were trying to win was already available without the struggle. The peace, the connection, the meaning, the wholeness, the worth. They were never earned. They were revealed the moment you stopped trying to prove yourself. Trying to win separates you from life. Stopping allows life back in. Life responds differently when you stop competing with it. There is a strange and beautiful shift that happens when you stop pushing. Life stops pushing back. The tension dissolves. The resistance evaporates. The world softens. Opportunities appear not because you demand them, but because you are finally open enough to notice them. People connect with you not because you impress them, but because you are no longer hidden behind a mask of superiority or fear. Decisions become lighter because they are no longer made from a place of insecurity. Life begins to flow with the same effortlessness as a river finding its way to the sea. Not because the river tries, but because the river allows. The moment you stop trying to win, you begin to cooperate with life instead of competing against its currents. And life always carries those who cooperate with it. The freedom of no longer proving anything. Imagine a world in which you no longer have to impress anyone, outperform anyone, justify yourself, defend your worth, maintain an image, hide your imperfections. Imagine a world where you can finally exhale because nothing is at stake anymore. That world is not a fantasy. It is what emerges when you stop trying to win. Suddenly you realize you don't need to be extraordinary to deserve happiness. You don't need to be admired to deserve love. You don't need achievements to deserve rest. You don't need victories to deserve your own kindness. You don't need validation to be real. This is the secret the ego desperately hides. You were always enough, even when you were trying to win. The world doesn't need another winner. It needs a human being. What the world craves is not more competitors. It doesn't need more polished performers, more ambitious heroes, more victorious champions. What the world longs for is humanity. A person who can sit with another without needing to impress. A person who can breathe calmly in a world addicted to urgency. A person who can listen deeply instead of waiting to speak. A person who can love without conditions or calculations. A person who can exist without competing. Your presence is more healing than your victories. Your authenticity is more valuable than your success. Your softness is more inspiring than your strength. And your willingness to be human is far more rare than your willingness to win. You lose yourself every time you try to win. But you find the world when you let yourself be human. The final return. A different kind of victory. There is a victory that does not look like winning in the traditional sense. It is quiet. It is humble. It is inward. It is the victory of letting go, returning to presence, reclaiming your breath, reclaiming your heart, reclaiming your truth, reclaiming your humanity. It is the victory of no longer fighting life nor fighting yourself. It is the victory of returning home. The moment you stop trying to win, you experience a deeper kind of triumph. The triumph of being enough, being here, being whole, being real. This is the only victory that does not fade. The only victory that does not require maintenance. The only victory that cannot be taken from you. Closing meditation. The breath you no longer have to earn. Close your eyes for a moment. Not to escape the world, but to feel the world without trying to win it. Take a breath. Not a perfect breath, not a deep breath, just a natural one. Let it come. Let it go. Effortless. Uncontrolled. Uncompeted. This breath does not ask you to win. It does not ask you to prove anything. It does not ask you to impress anyone. It arrives freely. It leaves freely. It is already enough, just like you. Feel your shoulders drop. Feel your jaw unclench. Feel your chest soften. Now whisper inwardly, I release the race I was never meant to run. Let the pressure fall away. Let the performance collapse. Let the ego rest. Let the real self rise. You lose yourself every time you try to win. But you find yourself the moment you stop trying. And now, finally, you can begin to live.